Well, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. Apologies for a late start. Just some background technical difficulties, as always, with technology. But we are going to talk about some technology that's going to help alleviate some technical difficulties. So, looking forward to today's webinar, and thanks very much for joining us. My name's Ken Lancastle. I'm the COO with MCA Canada. It gives me great pleasure to be introducing this webinar today. As we all know, it's a very unique time in the mechanical contracting space in Canada. And key trends are emerging across the country that have been the impetus for change. As we all know, there's a shortage of skilled laborers, there's increasing demand for key infrastructure, and there's a need for our industry to adopt technological innovation to remain competitive. One specific area has to do with the chronic bottlenecks and long lead times that we're experiencing in the areas of welding, often due to that shortage of skilled labor we talked about. This webinar is going to bring together two companies that have used the power of technology to help drive scalability. Pitt Meadows Plumbing is a leader in the mechanical contracting space with advanced fabrication capabilities that streamline project execution for large commercial and industrial builds. And Novarc Technologies is a trailblazing provider of welding automation solutions. The two have partnered together to provide a solution to the chronic bottlenecks that have been experienced by our industry. We need to embrace AI, and we need to mitigate our reliance on humans to optimize shop flow to meet our increasing project demands. So with that, I'd like to introduce Steve Robinson, COO of Pitt Meadows Plumbing, and Sarush Karimzadeh, CEO of Novarc Technologies, who are going to discuss the importance of scalability and how new technology can open doors to new industries, markets, and projects. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Sarush and Steve and get this webinar underway.
So do you want me just to talk, Ken, or what?
The floor is yours, Steve.
Okay. So thanks everybody for attending, taking the time to sit and have a chat. I want to just make a couple kind of weird sidebar comments. Number one is, I first met Sarush and his team at FabTech, I think in Chicago, and I'm going to guess either 6 or 7 years ago. And I was amazed to find that we actually had some basic worldwide leading technology being developed in North Vancouver, BC, primarily as a result of the, at that time, the federal government's initiative to build icebreakers, ships in North Vancouver. And so we actually got in conversations, bought our first Novarc, I'm going to say 6 years ago, maybe 7, 5. And since then bought another one about 2 years ago. I do want, though, in light of that, to say that welding is very important to us. We view ourselves as being primarily a welding contractor. In other words, if we have a choice, we will primarily weld generally. We like to have the ability to use VIC, but we don't use VIC like most contractors would. We use VIC as an interconnection tool, if you want to call it that. But the reality is that welding, in our mind, is the best way to produce a permanent and high quality product. So having said that, who's controlling the slides? Whoever's controlling it can give me another one. If you can't give me another one, let me just move on a little bit.
That's Sarush.
Thanks, Sarush. We have recognized that mechanical contracting today needs to be forward-looking. And when I say that, I continue to be amazed at what I call the lack of adequate initiatives to train the next generation, to even talk about the number of people we're losing. We are, at Pitt Meadows Plumbing, we're a very young group, though we have a lot of senior people, and we're just starting to see them move out. And the reality is, the thing that I think we need to remember more than anything else is when we have a senior person leave either A, the shop floor, or B, leave your site installing crew, the idea that we replace one-to-one is kind of almost hilarious. The reality is no, we need to be thinking about a multiple number of people to replace them. So one of the things that we found with welding technology especially is the fact that, and you guys will find the same thing, if you decided to introduce welding technology to your shop, you will find that you will always have detractors. The detractors will generally be the people who are extremely experienced and can survive and can flourish on their own without a technology. But the reality is they will not be here forever, just like you and me. And the reality is we need to be thinking about what that next generation looks like and what they're looking for. And one of the things, in fact, I observed it on a job, very large job we're doing in Vancouver yesterday. One of the what I call the production welders using, no, not using a Novarc, he's using um, a Pipeworks machine, and he hasn't even brought the smoke evac tool down to where he should have. He's just making a whole ton of smoke. And the reality is, the young guy working beside him with a far more advanced rotator and blah blah, of course, got his fume extractor set up properly. He's making no smoke, and I'm sure he's making a great job. But the reality is we need all of those people to be engaged. So that's just my next comment about that, making us understand that a lot of these technologies are very future looking. This slide here, labor shortage, technology, increased demand, safety, and mental health. So I made this slight safety comment. We have a number of women in welding in our shop. I don't think we have any women welding on the site, to be perfectly honest, because even with all the work we've done to make sites safer, to make them more hygienic, we still have young women will tell me they still feel at significant risk from a safety security perspective at the job site level that they just don't experience at the shop. And so having a robotic welder makes those people who may be a little less experienced and who may have less ability to strong arm something in or out of the way or in or out of the rotator. They need to have the crane above them. They need to have the rotator available, and they need to be able to get their work done as well. So it's just broadening the base as to who's available. Increased demand, like we all know, technology is advancing, but increased demand continues in my mind to be a challenge. And I think when I talk about increased demand, I think we all need to admit that our cost for construction are astronomical, and we need to start thinking more and more about how we actually can efficiently and cost effectively deliver infrastructure, to our communities. Like in our community, one of the big problems, if you haven't heard about it, is North Shore wastewater treatment plant. That's probably 5 or 6 times its original cost already, and that's a classic example of a big pipe job. And Metro Van is a huge believer in welding pipe products, and the reality is we all need to be thinking about how we bring those costs in line. Why? Because you and I need to have people who can afford to live in our communities, and sometimes being able to afford to live in the community is more than just the cost of housing. It's the cost of how do I afford to live here if my taxes in North Vancouver are going to be going up $700 per year per household just because of one sewage treatment plant. So that's just my example. Shrush can be the next one. By the way, everybody, I'm going to speak quite short, and so will Sarush. I'm a firm believer that the main reason we're here is to answer your questions. Common challenges. The first common challenge that we all need to align ourselves with is, first and foremost, you and I will always struggle with what I call detractors. Detractors are people who think that job site construction is just fine the way it is. And a lot of them feel that they can overcome any roadblock. We've had a lot of, and I would refer to this as mental health challenges in the last few years with, and I'm not talking about old men, I'm talking about younger men and younger women who have been completely demoralized by the effects of I'm not going to say inaccurate schedules, but unrealistic schedules, by the behavior of people who don't know what we're trying to accomplish on the job, by the unacceptable, and I'm not talking about inappropriate, I'm talking about just the idea that if somebody can't meet their dates, the fact that the leader who's leading the complete construction sequence is uninterested in listening to a solution. And we talk all the time about the solution being a parallel workforce working at a remote location in a shop environment that's co-working with the site people to prepare products moving forward. Rising material costs, that's a great one. We found huge traction with owners who are quite prepared to pay for products upfront landing in our shop. We've got lots of traction with developers and pension funds paying for finished product the minute it's finished, because they're just so sick and tired of schedule delays and schedule cost overruns from a site perspective. Next one, Sarush, if you can. Getting back to common challenges, I think that we all need to recognize that deciding to start to fabricate off-site in a shop environment does not mean automatically, in my mind, that the first thing you buy is a welding robot. And I know Sarush doesn't want me to say that, but the reality is there's probably lots of other things that you need to be looking at. And the biggest thing I will tell you, if you're looking at that and evaluating that and trying to determine if that's got value for you, is in the selection of your leader to head that up. I believe that in our situation, I worked my way through, I'm going to say at least 5 senior people, great people, experienced, worked with me for years. I knew what they could do. And I was amazed at the number of them that came back after 3 months and just said, I just can't deal with it. You know, we can't think that we're going to bring people off site from a typical construction site and stuff them into a manufacturing environment and think it's going to work. And if you looked at our crew downstairs and the way we manage workflow, you know, you must go to a digital workflow system. You must control it digitally, and you must be committed to working out the bugs. You need to have people who totally understand technology, and even when it comes to robotic welding, you know, we're depending on, you know, videos off the machine to be embedded in the file for as-built for the owner down the road. And as the whole expectations of an owner become more and more extreme as it relates to what we just built, that's the point where you realize that you have to have a digital platform in order to make that happen. Suresh, move on. Let's carry on. So that, you know, there's a number of, we're showing you just a number of the things that we're using. Obviously, I don't believe anybody in an offsite with an offsite plan can move forward without first and foremost developing an in-house competent BIM team. And when I say that, I know there's lots of you, and even we did once. We did a job about 7 years ago where we offshored it all, and it was basically all toilet paper, the whole thing. It was a total waste of time, no full understanding of codes, no understanding of the standards that our shop wanted to move forward with, because I believe that one of the most important things that a shop does is it creates its own standards. This is what we always do. And because no matter what we are or who we are, we all have consultants hired by owners that want to stuff us into their mold. And it's our role as part of early product or project delivery is to outline those things that we do or will do, and those things we just plain don't do. And there's lots of them, tons of them. So that's just my commentary. And having said all that, think about your questions. Sarush, if you want to carry on, we can deal with some of these other questions as they come in.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry, everyone, for joining late. Appreciate Steve for the introductory comments you made, and if you definitely value the partnership we've had over the years. So I just want to maybe just briefly touch on who we are and what we do. We are pioneers in the field of autonomous welding. Really, as pioneers, we help build a better world through applying robotics and AI for real world applications. So we have a very much a hands-on approach to solving problems, but we do leverage the latest and greatest in technology to make that happen. Our global footprint and impact so far on the world is we're proud to have 600 kilometers of pipes welded overall, 40,000, equivalent of 40,000 hours of archon time, and being operational on 4 different continents. this is really something that Novarc team is proud of, and we look forward to continuing to have this impact in the world. We're based out of Vancouver, as Steve mentioned. We have 2 different facilities, about 120 people that have been helping us build this company to this point. We do also have a facility in Houston. If you happen to travel there, if you would like to see the latest, greatest, it's there to showcase our latest in technologies. The sectors we serve, of course, is very broad. Building construction is by far the first and the most important, but we also have our solutions being deployed in oil and gas, shipbuilding, and as late some of these other industries that you see on this slide, including, for example, district heating, food and dairy, and pharma and biotech. Now, the technologies that we have developed, of course, so Steve mentioned robotic welding back in 2019, and we've had this product since 2016 launched. It's called a spool welding robot designed to automate pipe welding process. What we would like to share with you today is more around our Novi autonomy package that helps make the product more autonomous. And we're going to talk about how that's going to make your, how it's going to help optimize your flow and potentially open up new markets or make you more competitive. And as well, I'd like to touch on our WR tip TIG, which is our the TIG process added to our spool welding robot that's available. So as Steve mentioned, I mean, the big problem we're trying to solve is the shortage of welders while trying to be diverse and be able to make sure that the process flow in the shop is efficient. So what we've been able to demonstrate for the PMP team is that we've been able to increase our productivity significantly over the years, up to 60%. We've been able to maintain the qualities that they adhere, of course, as maybe 31.1, B31.3, depending on the job, and increase their ability to win more projects. With our WR autonomy package, the labor component that's required to supervise these units is significantly reduced. So that helps the bid that's going out for future projects of course become more competitive, and hopefully that will generate more top line growth for the businesses that adopt this technology. One aspect of adopting new technologies that we would like to highlight here is, and many of our customers actually leverage, is to demonstrate themselves as forward-thinking and in their industries. As you can appreciate the list here, we have been able to demonstrate this with the Pitt Metals Plumbing team, and not that Steve and team needed us to do this, but it's just another avenue to market the business and say that that's how differentiated your approach is to winning new business, and really positions the company differently in the eyes of the end users or the general contractors that you would be engaging with. And we do also help with this. If you guys can, if any of our customers would be interested in having our marketing material or support to be able to develop their own brochures around our technology, we have done many of those cases as well. Now, Novi Autonomy, it's AI-powered vision solution. As I mentioned, it increases the autonomy of a spool welding robot. Why is this important? It goes back to the shortage of welders that we touched on. So in a nutshell, this is what it will allow you to do. So you have one operator prepping another pipe or taking another task in the shop while the WR is set up already by the operator. It can weld that 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch pipe for whatever long that takes. Could be 10 minutes for a 10-inch pipe, for example, around there, while maintaining quality. And then that operator is freed up then to do something else. So, I mean, in one aspect, there's a reduction of labor as it relates to the welding cell itself, but there's also significant improvement in ergonomics, and something that Steve and I have talked about in Lens is around how it makes the work more appealing for a new generation. I mean, they're going to be really, I mean, setting up a robot and being around it to make sure it's doing the work, but then they're not burdened by the fact that they have to hold a torch and weld for hours and hours in a day. So it's just a different way of doing things, I guess, in this day and age that's much more appealing to the new generation, the Gen Zs or millennials who could be potentially looking at starting their careers in this industry. And on the flip side of that, if you guys have team members who are very senior, maybe they're towards retirement, maybe they've done this work for many decades and now they're having a harder time to hold the torch. Of course, they still know what a good weld is and what a bad weld is. They can still set up this machine and let it run. So having that person there and extend their careers is a very important aspect of what this solution can deliver to. So I mentioned the zero operator intervention, the fact that this provides that precision and quality using AI and ML. You get a route paths the way it should be. Even though there would be fit-up variations, we understand the real world, of course, the fit-up always has some variations and inconsistencies. The machine can adapt to those changes just like a human will do. So in that sense, it's in terms of analogy, it's very similar to a human welder. We're looking at the weld pool and the joint geometry and making changes during the weld, as opposed to relying on any pre-scanning or any programming. So you set it up, and the machine is looking in the weld pool. If there's a tack coming up, it will adapt to it. If the opening is increasing or decreasing, we'll adapt to it as well. But in terms of, again, making your business more competitive, in the end, it's all about making it more competitive so you can bid on more jobs and be able to increase your throughput while addressing the shortage of welders and making the culture of a company more forward-looking and more adaptable to new technologies. Now, this SWR TIPTIC, which I'd like to maybe just briefly touch on, is very interesting. It goes to the heart of your strategy and what you would like to be known for in your market segment. So we see this as an enabling tool for your businesses to be able to bid on projects in the alloy market. Of course, TIG has a strong footprint in the stainless steel world and other exotic materials to a degree that, you guys would be bidding on projects that are said to have a stainless steel or different alloys in them. This would be a great tool. It's about 3 to 4 times more productive or efficient compared to manual TIG, while not needing to have a TIG human welder running the process. So suddenly it opens up a door of being able to basically go after those projects that have maybe different alloys or different stainless steel in the process and not having to worry about, well, do I have a TIG welder that can do this project? I will just wrap it up here by saying that I 100% agree with Steve that in the end, this is a technology solution, but like any business, including ours, the ultimate success is going to be driven by the team. So having the right people in the right seats is paramount, of course, and that goes hand in hand with adopting a new technology like this. And then maybe I'll just wrap it up here and open up for questions.
Thanks, Soroush and Steve. We do have a Q&A function built into Teams should anybody have any questions, and we can help moderate that. Steve, one of the things you had mentioned during your opening remarks was just how important it is to have somebody on the team with respect to BIM. Are you seeing a level of BIM engagement from the owner community as well, or is it largely being driven by Pitt Meadows in this case?
No, I actually, believe it or not, the province of British Columbia started an initiative, I'm going to say about 4 years ago. And as a member of the MCABC board, I volunteered my time to help these experts, and I'm using something that says what I think about them, to determine what those standards should look like for the province. And I've been on that group, again, I'd say for at least 3 years. The province interrupted our early initiative, which was to determine whether or not it had value for the province to elect to standardize or enforce BIM modeling on all of the province's work over $20 million per project. And we kind of played what I call footsie for about 2 years before all of a sudden the government of BC interrupted the leadership of this group and said, no, we've just decided it for you. You're taking too long. We're going to mandate it. So we haven't seen that mandate yet. And the committee is still alive, but I can tell you that what I call sophisticated building owners and developers, health boards, large school districts, what I call the cutting edge developers doing large projects, they are all absolutely not only insisting that the project be BIMmed, but it be BIMmed properly. In other words, a minimum of an LOD 400, none of this kind of theoretical stuff. And we are seeing more and more action towards enforcement of the final product to ensure that the product or the model that was developed is actually the model that's built. Why is that important? Because when you have those standards expected of you, then the first thing that you want to do from every one of your tradesmen, if possible, is to take their tape measure away, because you want to have a machine doing the measuring, and so that you know that the product gets installed where it should, period. So yeah, we're seeing a tremendous push that way, and I think for those on this call who have thought that maybe that was a kind of a fad that's not going to take on, I would suggest to you that you need to start investing in that first, because so many of the other facets of efficient workflow flow out of the model, and the model being correct from the beginning. And it is crazy enough that we've been using senior, almost retired plumbing superintendents sitting with young modelers and just critiquing what they do every day, because that's what you have to do to make that successful.
Yeah, that was going to be sort of one of my follow-up questions, Steve, was what type of skill sets are you finding yourself requiring as a result of this transition to more BIM utilization? And are you is it a mentorship piece, or are you bringing in younger people who are just coming out of school who've got that BIM technology background already in place?
It's interesting. I've never seen our stats, but I'm going to say we have about 15 people involved in BIM. We have one young man that's our BIM leader who started from scratch. He was a plumbing apprentice, tragically lost his leg in an accident, and wanted to come back plumbing in the worst way. Spent 2 years in recovery, and I introduced him to the idea of modeling, and he was quite opposed to it throughout the first week. And then we actually just brought in experts to train him, and he kind of, hey, good news, the Fed slashed the rate by 0.5 point. Woo-hoo. Anyway, so he's moved the crew forward, and he's actually leads the whole team. But mentorship for us means that he leads about a 30 to 45-minute meeting every morning, because what is happening in BIM is if you don't allow your team to collaborate across the platform, or excuse me, if you do, they all find cheats. Just like, I come from the trade, and there's not one tradesman in the world in my mind that does exactly what he's supposed to do every time. He's using they're cheat mechanisms. He's found that if he tweaks his wrist like this, the thing does this and it works perfectly. Well, the same thing with BIM modeling. They're finding cheats, and one of the things they celebrate is we do a lot of, rather than start from scratch, you'll take a project that was delivered that you were happy with, and you start taking a section of that and you just modify it. And I know the facts. Like, I know our first hospital we BIMmed probably cost us $300,000 to BIM it. By the time we got to the second one, we're down to 150, and I think we're probably down to 75,000 now. Like, it's getting, the costs are dropping exponentially, and so it's all about training and upskilling with the whole team as you move forward.
Got a question in the chat here. I'll just read it out to you guys. Number of MEP groups struggle adopting BIM because of the quality of drawings or models provided by upstream stakeholders, and the BIM budget scope provided to the MEP groups during procurement, and the BIM budget scope provided to the MEP groups during procurement. They don't understand the needs of the downchain specialty trades. How can these groups overcome this, and is it worth MEP firms taking ownership over this issue?
Yes, and Shush probably doesn't know anything about this, but because if you come from what I call a pure industrial background, you're going to find that some of these upper end owners, and let me just give you a real simple example, Suncor. Suncor pays their engineers so much more than what the building sector pays their engineers. The reality is, you're exactly right. The design drawings we get for the building sector are pure toilet paper, and we just start from scratch every time. And that's why our big discussion to a building developer is, if you're getting a design done ahead of time, make sure it's nice and open, and we will include the cost for all the proper modeling. Don't waste your time with any engineer's BIM document. It's total toilet paper.
Sarush, just a question for you. And we've seen as technology is being introduced to the industry, there's always that uphill battle to take a technology and make it more commonplace in the industry. Certainly, adoption is always that slow. We've all seen that innovation arc. What are some of the sort of key things that you're telling contractors about this technology that's so important for them to know? And or are there specific things that contractors should be aware of and the industry as a whole should be aware of when it comes to selling this and improving adoption of technologies like yours?
Great question. Thank you, Ken. So I guess where we are today, I would like to say that spool welding robot is a proven technology many times over, and as I mentioned, in different continents based on the feedback we're getting from all the customers and the archon time that they're getting. So I would say the product innovation, or the innovation part of it, as you mentioned, Ken, it being new and how it impacts adoption, I would say to a lot of degree it's been adopted by many of our customers, or many of them are mechanical contractors, and they're seeing the benefit of it. Now, some of it is addressed, of course, by the technology. Some of it is addressed by our processes in terms of how we onboard new customers. So when we sign up a new mechanical contractor, we have a dedicated project management team that works with you through all the different phases, from figuring out what kind of power and air is required to run equipment, to also like what are the WPS procedures look like, what do we need to do there to make sure you're up and running. And our goal in the entire journey with you to when it does the first weld in production would be to minimize that time and make it as smooth as possible, while also keeping an eye on the change management aspect of it, that there's a new technology that's being introduced into the shop and how people are perceiving it. So we work with during our training part, we work with the welders on the floor and the shop foremen and the fitters to make sure they all understand how this technology ultimately helps the business and themselves to succeed, which is an important part of the adoption, Ken, to your point. So making sure that as the technology is there, it's been proven, but people, first time being introduced to it and it being introduced to the shop flow as well, there are elements there that need to be seen. We do also, for example, things like, as I mentioned, project management is one aspect, change management is another. Layout design, for example, like we work with you to find out what's the best layout that works for your shop. We, of course, do have, templated layouts that we can share with you, but to a good degree, one of the great things about this technology is its versatility and different dimensions. One of them would be the shop floor dimension, of course, and the other one would be around like how it can weld different materials, the joint geometries it accommodates. Those are definitely great differentiators that helps with that adoption, Ken, as you mentioned.
Steve, a couple questions for you. One, from a human resources perspective, obviously, when you're introducing a new technology that does the work of an existing individual, what type of feedback are you getting from your staff, from your workers when you're bringing something like this into the shop? Is it trepidation and fear, or is it excitement?
There's lots of intrepidation. I think, and this is just my observation, I believe that if you are younger, you like the idea of doing something different. If you're older, you don't. But we have, people always say to me, well, how many people are laid off? And I'd say, well, we probably hired, 10 times as many people. Like, it allows you to leverage to the scopes of the project to be so much larger, because people are comfortable recognizing that if the site team gets behind, if there's inadequate productivity, or sometimes we start together, the site that starts doing something and the shop does something different. The reality is it just broadens the depth of the markets you can tender to, with the confidence knowing that kind of no matter what happens, we'll have a plan B. But definitely the younger people are significantly more interested. We have a tour with the local high school robotics team here in a couple of weeks. And we're doing that because we want, number one of the things that we know is we're in a very high cost housing environment. For those of you who don't know, if you want to buy a condo for $1 million, you got to come to Vancouver and enjoy it. The reality is we look at young people here in our community as at least they'll be able to live, even if they're living in their parents' bedroom or basement. At least they'll get started. So we have an access to these youngsters that we would have a problem attracting other people to because of the price of housing. But the reality is it just another tool to attract more people? The people are different, but for all of us, we've learned to really enjoy the difference. And for those of you who are old school pipe shop guys, like one of the things that we've changed is because we came from what I call quite a traditional rig welder, with a plumber pipe fitting kind of thing on a job site. We early on we established that we wanted the welder to do his own fitting, and for a while we've done that. But as we've got into more of what I call a production environment, all of the fitting and tacking is done now by metal fabricators, and they love it. They don't like welding. They can weld, not to the standards that we expect for a 31-1 or 3, or even 9, but they can tack well. So all of our job sites even have gone to a tacker doing the tacking, and the welder just welding. So it starts to change the dynamic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it does allow you to be significantly more higher volume, right?
The other question I wanted to circle back on when we talked about the quality of documentation or design documentation, when it comes to implementing technologies such as this, are you getting any pushback from the consultant community when doing something this way that you have to sell to them as well, or?
I think what's happening, and we're seeing this, there was a number of people from our organization in a very large event last week down south, and we know, and this is great news, I think, if you're coming from the mechanical contracting industry or even the electrical contracting industry, those large builders in the US, and now I'm talking about the Teslas / data center battery plant people, they are firing big GCs like crazy and just saying, we don't need you guys. We're going to hire a competent M contractor and a competent E, and we'll fill in the gaps. We don't need you big GCs for anything. So I believe, will be pushing out the what I call the average consultants. They are going to be gone. That there will be large M&E contractors, and especially as the large M's start to align themselves more closely with the large E's, we are going to find that our pathway in the job site becomes significantly easier, because we're no longer dealing with those people who just want to pour concrete and pour it wrong every day, not wanting to listen to those people who have to use the holes. Simple as that.
Not seeing any other questions in our chat or a Q&A there, but Sarush, for a contractor who is interested in heading down this road, what are some of the first steps that they need to be taking from your perspective?
I would say what we would like to do is probably have a discovery call with them just to understand the problem they're solving in a deeper way. Kind of, are they trying to grow their top line, or they're having shortages of people? What kind of materials they weld? What is their current welding processes? And from that, we can also develop like a business case for this technology as well, that would then can be taken to the upper management or decision makers to demonstrate the value, the ROI. So we can assist with all that. And in the meantime, if they would like to kind of see this in operation, we have reference customers, or we have also units in our facilities that we can use to basically demonstrate how it works. I mean, a lot of times, one of the things that helps with adoption would be to get one of the shop foremen or some of the welders involved early in the process. So when they come and see it, they come and see how it operates, and work with it, even some degree, well with it, to get a first-hand feeling, and that would help later on as we go through. If when the decision of purchasing goes through and they're expecting the unit, they roughly know what to expect, rather than if they hear about it cold from somebody that the robot is coming to the shop and they have no idea what it is and what it's supposed to be doing. So yeah, the discovery and the business case development is something we can definitely assist, and of course arranging for demos. And then if there's any prep work that we need to do and arrange as well, like any in terms of installation or training, we will work with the mechanical contractors. But again, that will be something that's addressed later in the process.
question on the technology side. How does the automatic robotic welding machine adapt to varying material types and thicknesses in real time? And what excuse me, what kind of sensors or AI technology is used to ensure weld quality across different applications?
Great sort of question. So when you call it different, when you want to weld a different material or different thickness, we have different recipes that are developed for those materials. So we have a library of these recipes, basically proprietary recipes I will share with you. So that, again, back to the adoption, helps reduce the time to production for many of our customers. So that those recipes are selected by the operators when they're setting up the robot to start a weld. The AI kicks in after that when the recipe is selected. Say you're doing a 10-inch carbon steel standard wall. Now, if you have fit-up variation, for example, of the tack, there are of course tacks. There is a bit of a high-low. The bevel angles are not perfect. That's where the AI kicks in. It's using visual cues to understand what's happening in the welding scene and the joint as it's being welded, and it would then make corrections to the weld process itself, the weld parameters like wire feed speed or voltage, and also the parameters of the motion, so weave, frequency, or amplitude, to make sure that the weld is done properly. So that's how it does it, and we're not using any other sensors to ensure the quality, but we do record all the video of that weld, and that will be available to our Novsync platform, which is hosted on AWS. And if somebody wants to go back and see all the welds that they've done with that equipment, they can go back and see it in detail with the weld parameters all etched into that image in real time. So the fact that the welders are not going to be kind of, changing parameters or overcorrecting or making any mistake in the process, and that consistency is what drives the improved quality when it's done with autonomy, of course.
Steve, this question here for you. What Revit database is Pitt Meadows using for design?
One of the things we need to understand is that this has been a journey for us, just like our journey to technology is a journey. Our lean journey is a journey. Our journey to innovation is a journey. It changes, and our opinion of various things changes. Like we use, and I'm not the expert on this, but I can tell you that the biggest transformation we've had in the last 18 months has been our adoption of Revit Collaborate as being a common modeling program, and not Revisto, sorry, I was corrected. It's nice when the younger group who sits there actually can correct me. The reality is that that allows us to model in real time and in actual conditions with the electrical, structural, whoever else you want to invite to that program. We use Stratus. We're an early adopter of Stratus. We've been with Stratus for 6 or 7 years. We had people present for them last week, actually. The reality is that you need to commit to something and then have people that you're going to incentivize and be excited with to help them discover how they can leverage whatever program that is. And when I say cheating, maybe it is, I don't know, but it's amazing the thing that you can come up with if you're passionate about actually exploring something. By the way, one more thing I want to add for sure, and I'm not being prompted to do this, but I want you all to know that we are a very collaborative group. That has been one of our, we believe it's a secret of our success. We collaborate everywhere. And our future of work event is coming up in April of 2025. You need to plan to be here. It's not that expensive. Everybody you need to meet will be here. You can go to whatever other conferences you want, blah, 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 wherever. If you're not here, you're not actually getting a good, what I call, mix of what it takes to actually make something happen. So that's my little plug for our future work event. And we actually have I'm being prompted here. We actually have we've actually built our own database in-house when it comes to Revit tools, just so you know. Like you come to a point where you realize that that's the kind of thing you need to do. And when you hire the right people, they're excited about doing that. And it's amazing how quickly they come up with it.
Steve, I don't want to, I'm not going to steal your thunder because I know I've heard nothing but wonderful things about that event. But I will also say that both Steve and Sarush are going to be at the MCA Canada conference in Austin in November. So there's the November lead up to next April's Future at Work event. I think it's a great transition.
That is excellent. And you all need to know, and obviously, I guess if you're on this call, you must be a member of MCA Canada, I guess. The reality is we can do so much more together than we can do independently. And it's going to drive significant change for all of us in the future. And I believe we're going to all be leading the charge rather than being constantly dictated to by somebody else who really doesn't know what they're doing. And we're finding significant success from even large, what I call the traditional cheapskate kind of developers. We do 50% of our work is still multifamily high-rise construction, and almost all of it here in Vancouver has got a DEU or a DU capable system attached to it. So it's tons of pipe, tons of hydraulic heating and cooling, and the reality is that we're really into a brand new day as it relates to technology and how we need to lead on the whole built environment going forward.
Well, Sarush, Steve, there are no other questions that are showing up here. That's it for me for as far as questions. But I do want to, on behalf of MCA Canada, thank you again for taking the time, and I do want to offer you both the opportunity for any closing remarks that you'd like to make.
Steve, you go first.
I'm good. I'm done. I've spoken everything I need to say.
All right, thank you. Well,
except to add one thing, we have touched on about 3% of the conversations that need to happen. If you are thinking of moving your business towards what I call an offsite/onsite combined operation, because I think that's where we all need to be. That's just my opinion. Go ahead, Sarush.
Yeah, so I guess from our side, we just want to thank you, the CAC team, for Mechanical Association of Canada, for organizing this event and hosting us. I personally look forward to seeing you all in the event in Austin in November, and the event next year at PMP.
Well, Steve, Sarush, again, on behalf of MCA Canada, thank you very much for your time, your expertise, your insights on this topic. As you allude to, Steve, I think it's a conversation that we're only just getting started on, and looking forward to continuing this conversation in the years ahead, particularly as you point out, the mechanical contracting sector starts to play a much more prominent role across the country and across the construction industry and Canadian economy. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you to everybody in attendance. We will have a posting of this online on our YouTube page if you'd like to go back and view it again. And again, thank you for joining us. Bye for now.
Hey, everybody, let's get out there and think pipe.
Thanks, Steve.